First, Mike and Sarah Howe of Biddeford have a passion for adventure. They like to push themselves mentally and physically. It was no surprise when, in July, they set out on a high-speed, high-risk boat trip from the Northeast to Florida. We've done stories before on 207 on Mike and his twin brother Jeff. They founded and run How and How Technologies, a business in Waterboro. It designs and manufactures vehicles like this. They're used by the military, bomb squads, police and fire departments. They're vehicles that can go just about anywhere and perform highly specialized tasks while taking a beating. So when we heard about Mike and Sarah Howe and what they'd done this summer, it sounded like exactly the type of challenge they find irresistible. It all started with a question, or to put it more accurately, a vision.
What would it be like to have breakfast in New York City and dinner in Miami all on the same day by boat? It had never been done before, and just for that reason, we were going to try it.
There's a beautiful simplicity, a purity to that idea.
It sounded so simple and so good. But it was not that. It was a challenge the whole way.
Sarah, what did you think of this idea when he first started talking about it?
I'm used to his ideas now. So I've just learned to when he comes up with an idea and we know we're going to do it, I just start the planning.
Mike and Sarah Howe's boat is not something you'd see on Sebago on a summer afternoon. Top speed, 135 miles an hour. In getting to New York, they decided to try to set a record along the way, going from Portland Headlight to the Statue of Liberty.
That was one of the first things I think we're most proud of is we established what we believe to be a world record. I'm not sure if anybody's done it. We couldn't find any history on it. But from Maine to Lady Liberty, we did it in 5 hours and 43 minutes. 3 a.m., Saturday, July 8th, New York Harbor. You're ready to go. We are technically ready, but we're both exhausted. We had zero sleep. We started the longest day of our lives on empty.
Actually, that sounds like a really dumb thing to do, if
Really?
I can be frank. It sounds like a really dumb thing to do, to start this trip when you're exhausted and haven't slept.
We went to bed at 6 p.m. You know, we tried. We didn't read, we didn't watch TV, we literally just laid there in silence. And at 9 o'clock p.m., we both looked at each other and just said, I wish we could go right now. We wish we could leave.
And we would have if we had daylight. We just didn't want to run that long without daylight.
Finally, at 3 in the morning,
And start.
they accelerated out of New York Harbor.
And I looked behind us and it was all lit up. And it was beautiful. And I looked in front of us and it was just a black curtain. There was nothing. It was just a black curtain. And I knew that we had to do about 1,500 miles in that direction. And the next 2.5 hours was going to be just a black curtain.
70 to 80 miles an hour.
Not long after daylight broke, the next challenge arose.
I got pretty seasick which I never get in a boat moving.
Sarah believes she got seasick because she'd been looking so intently, so unwaveringly at the dashboard imaging screen that detects hazards on the water.
It was dark out, there was no horizon to focus on, and I'm just kind of reading. And so I spent the next 6 hours pretty miserable.
Puking in a coffee cup, miserable.
I'm going to timestamp this photo.
They made it to Hatteras, North Carolina, just over 400 miles from New York City, in about 5 hours, 45 minutes. That was a record.
We just broke the world record from New York to Hatteras, hon. You and me.
They stopped to get fuel.
We have a pretty big following on Facebook from some of the adventures we do. And we show up at the gas station and they love the channel, they're very helpful, and we're fueling up. We had called ahead of time, make sure that we could get in there. And we're under the gun, and I'm just like looking at the clock, and here's Sarah handing out t-shirts and hats. She's very
running the merch operation.
She's running the merch operation, and I'm like, honey, we gotta go. Hold on. She's like, okay, this doesn't quite fit you. Maybe we need an XL.
The more merch I handed out, the more people came over. And do you have an extra gray hat? Do you have an extra large?
So I had to basically just shut the lid of the merch, and we just went. We just said, let's go.
From North Carolina to Georgia, going 70 to 80 miles an hour, they began to hit swells, big swells, which pounded them relentlessly.
So we together have about 30,000 miles in a high-speed boat. That's around the world in a high-speed boat. And I've never experienced pounding like that because it was so repetitious. I felt like at some point I was getting concussed. I would have white light go through my head. Boom, boom, and every time. Even though my head wasn't hitting a wall or my head wasn't hitting something hard, it was the violent shock.
You know, we've done a lot of athletic events together, a lot of
Tough Mudders, Spartans,
Go Rucks, you know, these 12 to 24-hour physical events, and neither one of us have ever felt the way we felt when we got to St.
It was
Augustine.
humbling.
From Georgia to North Florida, thunderstorms slowed the Howes down and forced them to go off course, ending their dream of having breakfast in New York and dinner in Miami.
And we decided to pull into St. Augustine and twist it a little bit and say we had breakfast in New York City and dinner in Florida, all on the same day by boat.
Were you disappointed?
I was heartbroken.
They spent the night in St. Augustine, Florida, headed south the next morning, and set a record for fastest run from New York to Miami in an outboard boat, 34 hours. It was, in the end, an experience that brought Mike and Sarah closer.
Adventures typically can do that, but this one was special because there were elements of life and death. There were elements of real fear, elements of real sorrow, elements of real elation.
When you think back on it now, and it's only 1 month in the rearview mirror, well, what sort of comes to mind? What stands out?
I want to do it again.
They do indeed. They have a taste for adventure and a seize the day attitude, which is pretty infectious. And the Howes also have a big following on social media. If you'd like to check out their videos, and there are a lot of them, you'll find a link in the 207 section of our News Center Maine website or app.